Hello, everyone. Welcome to my webinar on EMFs and radiation technology. What we're going to be discussing here today is extremely important, so I greatly appreciate you taking the time to be here. I'll just quickly introduce myself and then we'll jump right in. So, my name is Carly, and I'm a certified EMF specialist, but more importantly, I'm a very proud mom to two amazing boys, Tristan, who's 14, and Jack, who's 6. Tristan is neurotypical, which basically just means he's developing within the normal range for his age. And his younger brother, Jack, is on the autism spectrum and nonverbal. With Jack's diagnosis, we've had many challenges, as I'm sure you can imagine. One of those challenges has been dealing with his exposure to electromagnetic radiation and its effect on his development, his ability to focus, and his ability to sleep. I will share more on this later, but his ability to sleep and focus has significantly improved, and I can't tell you how grateful I am. It really has made a difference. So, although I am a certified EMF specialist, my aim and skill set is pulling together all the research, all the developments from the global experts in this field and translating it for the everyday layperson so a better awareness can be had around this very important subject.
Okay, let's get started. So, we call this the wireless elephant in the room. Many people go into denial about the reality of what's going on because they like their technology. It doesn't make sense that something so enjoyable and so convenient could be inconvenient for our health. So, coming out of denial is extremely important, and that's what this elephant symbolizes. So, you'll be seeing them a few more times just to emphasize this point. Okay, so here's our agenda. I'm going to start with a recap of what we're really dealing with in this new era of technology when it comes to our exposures to electromagnetic radiation and the technologies of 2G, 3G, 4G, smart meters, and the new technology of 5G and the Internet of Things. I will briefly discuss the current events and try to shed some light on how technology is impacting the world more than ever before. I will go into some detail about the governing bodies that are in charge of regulating our exposures and how they have been operating and what that means for us. I will share with you the research that has been circulating in the scientific community and explain why this research hasn't been made more public. I will share how the mechanism of DNA damage discovery that came out about 6 years ago was the catalyst for bringing the world of physicists and biologists together on this topic. I will share with you some very useful health defense strategies that you can implement that won't cost you a penny. And finally, I will share with you an earth technology that remediates these biological effects, something that has drastically changed my life as well as the life of so many others. I really do hope by the end of this presentation you will feel empowered with some knowledge and some real options to protect yourself and your loved ones. There are serious biological health implications that need to be understood and brought to the public so that improved accountability and hopefully improved safety can be gained as these advancements in technology continue to move forward. This information is so important. I really do hope once you come to see the importance that you'll be moved to pass along this presentation to others so we can get this message out to more people.
So, here are some of the wireless technologies that we love so much that are exposing us to radiation levels that our body isn't able to manage: cell towers, Wi Fi routers, solar technology, smart meters, any smart technology that's using Bluetooth, cordless phones, cell phones, tablets, laptops, Bluetooth earbuds, baby monitors, and so many others. All of these technologies are exposing us to radiation well beyond safe levels. You would be amazed if you knew just how many more exposures there really are in our environment.
Okay, I'm sure most of you are aware of this, but I just think it's important to mention we are electromagnetic beings, or beings of light. Consequently, we respond to external sources of electromagnetic frequencies in a variety of ways that can be either beneficial or harmful. With the electromagnetic radiation that we're going to be discussing here today, it is causing extreme harm to the human body. Because we're electromagnetic beings, because we take in that signal, because it changes both the communication and the functionality within our bodies. And unfortunately, this reality has never once been taken into account when technological advances have been made in our society. And that's why we're facing this giant mess that we're going to be discussing here today. The bigger picture about the elephant in the room is that advancements in technology related to wireless radiation are cumulative against our health.
So, when a new generation of technology gets released, it's usually an additional technology and not a replacement. 1G is really the only technology that has been phased out completely. So, a new generation of cellular standards has appeared approximately every 10th year since 1G systems were introduced in 1979 and the early to mid 80s. For time's sake, I'm not going to get into the details about the series problems with smart meters, but I would highly recommend that everyone take some time to watch the documentary Take Back Your Power by Josh Del Sol. It's available to watch for free at his website. But here's a hint: smart meters are major sources of varied pulsed energy directed at you in your home 24 hours a day. Josh Del Sol extensively covers the harm of smart meters in his documentary, so please make sure you take the time to watch it and learn more. So, the higher frequencies of 5G require antennas at close proximity and within line of sight to function properly. This means that the rollout of 5G is bringing these small cell towers into our neighborhoods and spacing them out every 2 to 12 houses, delivering the fastest, shortest, highest intensity wavelengths within the microwave spectrum directly at you in your home. I would like to note that 5G and 5 gigahertz are not the same. 5 gigahertz refers to a specific frequency, 5 billion cycles per second, and 5G refers to a specific technology that relies on multiple frequencies. Some people get this mixed up and believe they already have 5G in their home, which is untrue. So I just wanted to clarify that. Right now, we're seeing small cells going up on lampposts and street signs and other municipal infrastructure. And many of these towers are actually placing both 4G and 5G antennas on together. So not only are we adding 5G exposures at close proximity, but we're also bringing the harmful effects of 4G technology closer to our homes, in addition with these new 5G antennas. So this is invisible, but there are all kinds of pulses to this biologically active technology. 5G specifically is narrow beamforming technology designed to aim directly at you and your device. We need to understand that our health isn't being put first in the rollout of this technology. Okay, the electromagnetic spectrum. Electromagnetic fields, or EMFs, are invisible areas of energy, measured in hertz. Longer wavelengths with lower frequency are less powerful in terms of energy, while shorter wavelengths at higher frequencies are more powerful. So, depending on the frequency, there are two categories of EMFs: ionizing and non ionizing radiation. Ionizing radiation, which is mid to high frequency, includes ultraviolet rays, X rays, and gamma rays. The energy from ionizing radiation can damage human cells and cause cancer. Non ionizing radiation has lower frequencies and bigger wavelengths. Many experts are of the opinion that non ionizing radiation produces only thermal effects, or tissue heating, and that at high exposure levels, temperature sensitive biological structures, including humans, can become damaged. You'll find out later that the non thermal effects that are extensively scientifically proven are much more harmful to the human body. Microwave and millimeter wavelength radiation is non ionizing. A millimeter wave ranges from around 10 to 1 millimeter. This is a very effective spectrum with large bandwidth, but it is also very sensitive to external variables and can be subject to interference from walls, trees, and even rain. For the first time, 5G will use millimeter waves in addition to the microwaves that have been used to date in 2G, 3G, and 4G technologies. And due to the limited coverage, to implement 5G, cell antennas will have to be installed very close to one another, which will result in constant exposure of the population to millimeter wave radiation. The use of 5G also requires new technologies to be employed, such as active antennas capable of beamforming massive inputs and outputs. With these higher frequencies and shortened ranges, base stations will be more closely packed into one area. As I mentioned in my previous slide, this means ranges of 200 to 500 feet with small coverage areas per small cell. So a cell radius of 12 miles would imply about 500 base stations per square mile. This contrasts with 3G and 4G technologies, which use macro cells offering ranges of 1 to 10 miles or more, and therefore covering a larger area but allowing fewer simultaneous users, since they have fewer individual channels. 5G's higher frequencies and greater bandwidth will enable users to transfer wireless data faster. Many scientists point out that the issue with 5G isn't necessarily the potency, but the pulse. The whole population will be exposed to this pulsed frequency due to the dense network of antennas and the estimated billions of simultaneous connections. As 5G employs a very high level of pulsations, the idea behind 5G is to use higher frequencies, which allows for higher levels of pulsations, in order to carry very large amounts of information per second. The research shows that pulsed EMFs are in most cases more biologically active and therefore more dangerous than non pulsed EMFs. You'll understand this more as we get into the mechanism of damage caused by EMF exposures. As we've discussed, 5G is not just an upgrade from 4G. This is the next major evolution in wireless communication. 5G is the central platform for connecting everything to everyone at all times. It will be the necessary technological support for the Internet of Things. Currently, we are seeing streamlining bills stripping local authorities of any decision making power when it comes to approving new cell towers and antennas to be put up in our neighborhoods. This is paving the way for a rapid 5G rollout. And of course, the telecoms industry views all of this as highly positive because it means billions of dollars of infrastructure revenue for them, followed by users' fees that will ultimately be paid for by the public, whether or not they even want the service. Also, 5G technology has been used for decades to spy on government officials and families of government. These people experience sickness and neurological problems without knowing why, and it's because they're being monitored with 5G technology and it's causing these direct biological effects to their health. Also, 5G technology has been used as a weapon for crowd control, known as the active denial system. They spray the crowd with millimeter wave radio frequency, and it causes the water molecules in your sweat glands to feel like they're boiling, and the crowd will disperse immediately. The military has been using this technology as a weapon for decades. Also, currently in China, they're using a social crediting system with the 5G technology. So, for example, this means a man who might not have that much money could be headed to the grocery store with maybe 20 bucks in his bank account. If this man jaywalks across the street, he will automatically get $1 deducted from his bank account, and he may end up not having enough money for his grocery bill because he isn't even notified of his own money being taken from his personal bank account. So, this program allows for a government to freeze the rights of its citizens, freeze their money, their ability to travel, and this program is possible with 5G technology. This isn't about China's use of 5G technology. This is about all governments being able to roll out the same type of surveillance and control over everyone. So, this is a huge red flag for all global citizens. And we really can't think this is staying isolated in China because they're already doing testing for the social crediting system in parts of Australia. The entire world is in a race for the 5G rollout. And believe it or not, China has already begun developing 6G technology for the general public, and the military is already using 7, 8, 9, and 10G technology. Okay, so before we get too far into the meat of this presentation, I just have to discuss the biggest elephant in the room to date. As of 2020, the world is experiencing a global pandemic that has captivated the attention of humanity. There are many theories circulating, and I won't go into any of them now, but I do want to point out some important developments. CNBC published this article on March 20th, 2020, propagating that this pandemic has advanced the need for a more robust 5G technology for remote workers, with some convenient data from Verizon stating that the bandwidth demands have increased dramatically, and therefore the FCC and federal government are trying to accelerate deployment in urban and rural areas. How convenient that this pandemic forced a lockdown where society must work from home, naturally driving the increased use of wireless technology. So, 3 days after CNBC published that article, and while the world has its eyes fixed on a questionable and confusing pandemic situation, the U.S. government has passed into public law Bill S 893, the Secure 5G and Beyond Act of 2020. This bill requires the president, in consultation with relevant federal agencies, to develop a strategy to secure and protect U.S. fifth and future generation systems and infrastructure so 5G. Such strategy shall 1. Ensure the security of 5G wireless communications systems and infrastructure within the United States, and 2. Assist mutual defense treaty allies, strategic partners, and other countries in maximizing the security of 5G systems and infrastructure, and 3. Protect the competitiveness of U.S. companies, privacy of U.S. consumers, and integrity of standards setting bodies. What does this mean in layman's terms? Fighting the install and activation of 5G technology is going to be much more difficult, and we can most likely expect a rapid expansion of 5G infrastructure across the country. This is advancing much faster than many of us in this field expected, and we all need to keep paying attention.
Okay, the same day that CNBC published the 5G expansion amidst the coronavirus pandemic article, they also published this article, speaking to the fact that the FCC has approved SpaceX, Elon Musk's company, to deploy up to 1 million small antennas for Starlink internet network. Starlink is an ambitious network of about 12,000 satellites that SpaceX wants to use to provide high speed internet to anywhere in the world. I know there are many conversations about this virus and how 5G could be exacerbating the effects of this pandemic. I'll share 2 points with you on this. The first point is that the Princess Diamond cruise ship was premiering a 40 gigahertz Starlink network where dedicated mid Earth orbit satellites followed the boat around to provide high speed data to them. I understand that not all breakouts of this virus are 5G enabled places, but you have to remember we have satellites activated in orbit, and this is having an impact on all cities, not just the cities that have activated 5G antennas. Also, back in August of 2019, a group of prominent scientists warned the world that there is strong evidence that 5G may have, quote, a systemic effect on immune function and cause acceleration of bacterial and viral replications, end quote. In the International EMF Scientist Appeal to the United Nations, signed by over 250 scientists from 43 countries, they stated that the proliferation of 5G, wireless technology, and dirty electricity is, without a doubt, increasing unnecessary vulnerabilities in the spread of infectious disease. I will talk about the appeal later on in this presentation, but I wanted to let you know that illness associated with the electrification of the earth and the human body from man made technology is not a new phenomenon. At present, the deployment of 5G promises to interconnect 20 billion devices wirelessly, adding 800,000 small cells or base stations close to our homes and launching 50,000 satellites that will require 1 million antennas on the ground. We need to keep in mind that these numbers are rapidly increasing from month to month. So, regardless of where the numbers are at when you're viewing this presentation, I hope you can see the seriousness of what's at hand. Before I move on, I want to briefly mention the most recent update on satellites.
While we're on the topic of Starlink, I want to give you an update from Arthur Furstenberg's recent newsletter. Arthur's an amazing advocate for our health in relation to technology and space, among other environmental issues. He wrote this phenomenal book called The Invisible Rainbow that I highly recommend everyone pick up a copy and read. He also runs the organization and website cellphonetaskforce.org, where he shares a great deal of information worth looking into. I'm going to read part of his newsletter, which are in Arthur's own words, about the present state of affairs as of October 2020. Hopefully, it'll give a little insight into the kind of content you can find on his platform. The article is titled Emergency in Heaven. Early on October 6, 2020, at 5:29 a.m. Mountain Time, SpaceX launched another 60 satellites to join their fellows racing through the ionized layer of air that protects us and gives us life. At about that time, a good friend of mine here in Santa Fe was awakened by a severe nosebleed. That evening, I told the grocery clerk at the checkout counter that I was feeling unusually tired. So am I, he said. There are now 738 satellites operating in the Starlink constellation. Except what they can do for us, connect us faster and faster with billions of people and machines, everyone pretends that they're not there, that we can continue to punch holes in the air with impunity, burn prodigious amounts of fossil fuels, fill up the stratosphere with black soot, litter the night sky with moving lights, and alter the invisible electric field that connects us with the sun and stars and circulates through our bodies from birth until death. In recent weeks, on the coast of Australia, record numbers of whales committed suicide by beaching themselves. In Botswana, hundreds of elephants suddenly collapsed and died. Here in the Southwest, from Nebraska to Colorado to Texas, New Mexico and Arizona to northern Mexico, millions of migrating birds have fallen dead out of the sky, emaciated, starved to death because there are no insects to eat. Our house is burning down and no firefighters come. The source of the flames is unacknowledged. It's unseen. It is there in the air, speeding from phone to phone, antenna to antenna, satellite to satellite, filling atmosphere, earth, and seas, penetrating bones and disrupting nerves of every animal, bird, insect, and tree. On April 11th, 1862, Henry Brooks Adams, grandson of the sixth American president, wrote, "I firmly believe that before many centuries more, science will be the master of man. The engines he will have invented will be beyond his strength to control. Someday science may have the existence of mankind in its power, and our human race commit suicide by blowing up the world. That day is here." I'm going to skip the rest of his newsletter, except for the end where he gives an update on a federal lawsuit that he filed on December 21st, 2018. "I organized and funded a lawsuit against the city of Santa Fe, New Mexico, the state of New Mexico, and the United States of America to restore the constitutional rights of the people of the United States. We are challenging the constitutionality of a city ordinance, a state law, and Section 704 of the Telecommunications Act of 1996. These laws, and laws like them all over the world, effectively mandate the placement of antennas on the streets and sidewalks in front of homes and businesses, while depriving injured people of any means of protest or any remedy for their injuries. These laws violate the First Amendment right of freedom of speech, the First Amendment right to petition the government for redress of grievances, the Fifth and 14th Amendment right not to be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, the Fifth and 14th Amendment right not to have property taken without just compensation." On May 6, 2020, the district court dismissed our complaint, and we immediately filed an appeal in the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals in Denver. Oral argument has not yet been scheduled, but you can read our brief here at www.cellphonetaskforce.org// 5G-litigation. This is the only case of its kind in the United States. Section 704 of the Telecommunication Act prohibits states and local governments from regulating cell towers on the basis of their health or environmental effects. This is a vitally important lawsuit, and he says donations are welcome. So, if you would like to stay up to date on satellites or this lawsuit, I would highly recommend you signing up for Arthur's newsletter.
Okay, so according to numerous reports, there has been a whistleblower from the Department of Education that has alerted the public that during this pandemic shutdown, the telecoms industry has been installing 5G infrastructure in schools and public gathering areas, incognito, mostly utilizing cleaning vans. This person says that all workers have signed non disclosure agreements in an attempt to keep this hidden from our communities. Now, I'm not going to say that this is definitely happening, but I felt it important enough to bring the possibility to the attention of my listeners. If our children go back to school and start getting radiation sickness that is explained by another round of a mutated virus, we should start asking questions. I'd rather us be safe than sorry, and I apologize if this turns out to be false. But given the pushback from protesters, scientists, and researchers around the world, they may feel that they have to take a different approach to rolling out this next generation of technology.
People are questioning whether there is a relationship between the rollout of 5G and the number of COVID-19 cases in various countries. Claims have been made that the highest number of deaths attributed to COVID-19 are in those places that deployed 5G during the past 2 years. Dr. Magda Havas, a scientist, researcher, and expert in all things electromagnetic fields, has looked into the matter, and she did find it difficult to get accurate and consistent data about 5G globally. So she decided to narrow her focus to the United States. She compared the US 5G coverage as of April 2020 to the COVID 19 statistics for April 2020. In the US, there are four major telecoms providers: Sprint, T-Mobile, Verizon, and AT&T. They use different frequencies, and currently coverage is spotty at best. So in the US, 5G consists of only three frequency bands at the moment. They can be labeled sub 1 gigahertz, which is below 1 gigahertz, sub 6 gigahertz, and then much higher frequencies called millimeter waves. The Federal Communication Commission, or FCC, has yet to auction the millimeter wave part of the spectrum, so the highest frequencies to which people in the US are currently exposed are sub 6 gigahertz. I'm sure many of you have been made aware that Wuhan, China, the origin of this pandemic, was the first city to be rolled out with 5G testing. So this means that prior to COVID-19 spreading in Wuhan, the city was switched on with 5G technology. This undoubtedly has an impact on the health of the population. It is interesting to note and to keep in mind in the future that the 60 gigahertz frequency used in Wuhan has a direct impact on the electrons of oxygen molecules, making it pretty impossible for a person's hemoglobin to absorb oxygen properly. There has been recent research that came out regarding COVID 19 that it has presented as something like high altitude sickness, basically like an oxygen starved tissue response. I'm not going to make further associations between the pandemic and some 5G frequencies, but I do mention it so you can keep it in your mind as we learn more in coming months about this pandemic and 5G developments.
Okay, so Dr. Havas compared the average number of cases, deaths, and tests for COVID 19 per million population in states with and without 5G, and this is what she found. Please note that the data has been standardized for population, which just enables us to compare states with smaller as well as larger populations. So, as you can see, the average or mean number of COVID 19 tests per 1 million people is similar for the states with 5G and the states without 5G. COVID 19 cases per million are 95% higher, and COVID 19 deaths per million are 126% higher in the states with 5G. So, whether these results are due to some factor other than 5G and whether this association will persist as time goes on remains to be seen. So, we will be going over more of these details, but I briefly want to mention that the current radio frequency guidelines in the US do not protect public health. They are based on a heating effect for short term exposure. If you live within 400 meters of a cell phone base station, you have a greater risk of developing cancer and a greater risk of neurohormonal dysregulation. And this is based on similar frequencies currently emitted by 5G antennas. Numerous scientific studies documented impaired immune function, which could make individuals more susceptible to viral and bacterial infections. In this case, what this means is increased chronic illness among young and old alike, and a greater susceptibility to biological vectors from bacteria to viruses to molds and parasites. The body has a hard time healing when it's constantly bombarded by radio frequency radiation. We'll go into some more depth regarding the research and developments further along in this presentation, but I wanted to make sure to briefly touch on this pandemic and piece together a little bit some of the issues surrounding 5G and its impact at this present time. So this map shows all the cities within the USA that have some form of 5G. Some states have only one provider, while others have as many as 4. And the number of cities with 5G within each state also varies, with California having the most cities with 5G at 9. I would recommend checking out the interactive Ookla 5G map, which tracks 5G rollouts in cities across the world. It is updated weekly from verified public sources as well as Ookla data. You can find them at www.speedtest.net/Ookla-5G-map.
Okay, on September 13, 2017, over 180 scientists and doctors from 35 countries sent a declaration to officials of the European Commission demanding a moratorium on the increase of cell antennas for their planned 5G expansion. Concerns over health effects from higher radiation exposure include potential neurological impacts, infertility, and cancer. In their letter to the European Commission, the scientists write, quote, We, the undersigned, more than 180 scientists and doctors from 35 nations, recommend a moratorium on the rollout of the fifth generation 5G for telecommunication until potential hazards for human health and the environment have been fully investigated by the scientists independent from industry. End quote. If you are interested in learning more about this group's appeal efforts, please visit 5gappeal.eu.
So, well before the rollout of the 5G technology was being discussed in the scientific community, a petition was submitted to the United Nations and the World Health Organization back in 2015. It was called the International EMF Scientist Appeal. It has now been signed by more than 250 scientists from 43 nations, all of which have published peer reviewed research on the biological health effects of electromagnetic fields. Since the appeal was published, the world's largest $30 million study, conducted by the National Toxicology Program in the US, shows statistically significant increases in the incidence of brain cancer and heart cancer in animals that are exposed to cell phone radiation at levels below international guidelines. For more information on this original appeal, please visit emfscientist.org.
Okay, so how do we know the EMFs cause harm? The National Toxicology Program is the gold standard for toxic research in the United States. This study was requested by the FDA, the Federal Drug Administration, and it was designed by Swiss scientists, receiving gleaming approval on its design by the FDA themselves. When the results came in, showing extreme carcinogenic effects, the FDA decided to throw out the results and said they aren't relevant to humans. This has to do with industry having captured the government agencies that are meant to protect us and have nothing to do with the study being anything but impeccably designed. The results were shocking. The study conclusion states, quote, "There is clear evidence that EMFs cause 10 types of cancer in rats exposed to EMF levels below the current safety standards: cancerous heart tumors, cancerous brains, cancerous adrenals," end quote. This study was based on data using 2G and 3G cell frequency exposure. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to comprehend that stacking 4G and 5G radio frequencies on top of these older generations is going to cause greater biological harm. Okay, so the truth is, we know more about the biological effects of EMFs than we know about smoking, and the harmful effects are considered far worse. I will get into why the general public doesn't know as much as they should, but I'm sure many of you can remember what happened with the tobacco industry. There are over 4,000 studies that can be found at thebioinitiative.org alone. The Bioinitiative is a group of non-biased international electromagnetic field scientists and researchers which have no agenda, sell no products, and whose sole purpose is to share the truth about their scientific research findings. This trustworthy, independent voice calls the biological health effects of electromagnetic radiation a global pandemic. The microwave radiation levels are 1 quintillion times higher in just 10 years from 2007 to 2017. That's 1 million trillion times higher. Okay, this next study will blow your mind. This study is basically the European Union's version of the USA's National Toxicology Program study. It was led by German professor Franz Edelkofer, and it was conducted in 12 different institutions across Europe. The European Union paid over 3 million euros to study the DNA damage from cell phone frequencies. These researchers, they don't have any reason to scare people, but they all still concluded the same thing about DNA damage. 24 hours on a cell phone is equivalent to about 1,600 chest x-rays. I mean, even if that's 100 times wrong, with only 16 chest x-rays, that would be a huge problem, but it's so much worse. Over 1,500 chest x-rays in a day, I mean, it's unbelievable.
That's why the scientists like this guy, Barry Trower, are saying it's more than an epidemic, it's a crisis to mankind. Barry Trower is a retired physicist from the British Secret Service and the Navy. He used microwaves as weapons as part of his job. This is the thing that worries me the most. The biggest reason of all as to why we need to address this problem. We're going to take a listen to the first few minutes of this video, but I highly encourage you to look up this video and others on YouTube by searching Barry Trower. This particular video is about 8 minutes long. Let's take a listen.
Wi-Fi, I think anyone who puts Wi-Fi into a school should be locked up for the rest of their life. I really do. I think they're not fit to walk on the surface of this planet because they haven't looked at the research, and whatever incentive they have, it is not worth the genetic problems that parents are going to face with their children when they're born. And if you think of a single parent, and so you give birth to a daughter, but her ovaries are now contaminated. She may be normal, she may be genetically damaged, but her ovaries are at the most risk. So when your daughter grows up and she becomes pregnant and has a baby, this is where one of these eggs will be fertilized and come out. So the real damage here is your grandchildren. That is where it is going to show most. And we already see this in animals that have reproductive cycles of a year or 2 years or 3 years. We're already seeing this, and it has been published by veterinary schools and vets and scientists. So we know this happens. And it's also been documented in the Cold War when women were deliberately microwaved. So we know it does happen. The documents are there. And what you're risking by putting Wi-Fi into schools is the future generations of all of these girls. But it gets worse because this particular DNA, the mitochondrial DNA inside you, and the DNA inside you, the mitochondrial DNA, you can trace unchanged to your mother, her mother, her mother, right the way back to the beginning of the human race in Africa, the Stone Age. You can trace your ancestors, if you could, right back to the very first lady. It is unchanged, the mitochondria. And that is being unchanged in your children, which means if you damage it, your child could be genetically damaged, then her child, and her child, and her child, forever. You are condemning the future generations of every single child until there are no more lines left in the female in your family.
Okay, so basically, a mom being exposed to EMFs is totally destroying her grandkids. This is absolutely insane. So, we're not going to see the most horrific results of this EMF exposure until 2 generations down the road. Here's a direct quote from Barry Trower regarding military experiments using 5G. Quote, the USSR experimented on humans and animals with 5G in 1972, 1977, and 1997. It was a proper military experiment. The humans suffered metabolic problems, i.e., everything started to fall apart, blood problems, immune system dysfunction, severe medical and neurological problems. With animals, since they were able to dissect them, they found the bone marrow was suffering, which, by the way, it produces your immune system, respiratory damages, enzyme activity damage, nuclear DNA damage, and the total exposure time was only 15 minutes over 60 days. So, roughly 15 minutes a day, and the levels were not high. Not as high as you're going to get in a classroom. End quote. So, this is alarming, but it's information that we need to understand and digest. So, we're on a destructive wireless and antenna densification path in the US and around the world. We're already seeing the 4G and 5G ready radio frequency antennas going up on utility poles and lampposts. We've seen an increase in outdoor cell towers, more and more cell phones and tablets, with younger and younger aged children using these devices. We're seeing a major marketing push for the Internet of Things,
where everything is going to be wirelessly interconnected. That's somebody's vision, at least, which makes zero sense on health grounds. We're seeing the growth in wearable wireless technology, with even Google's Eric Schmidt saying we're on track to have 10 IP addresses on our body. We've got the rollout of the huge smart utility meters that are emitting radio frequency and also adding dirty electricity to the electricity already in our homes. We're seeing the Wi Fi from space with tens of thousands of low orbit satellites near the Earth that are beginning to be launched every 3 weeks to be specific. Radio frequency emitting vehicles, wireless charging cars, much higher frequency millimeter waves, and more dangerous 5G technologies are coming. Even radio frequency emitting roadways are under development. So we're polluting our nest, and it's a total lack of consciousness about biological and health effects of the electromagnetic fields. We're also in a surveillance economy, and it's because of the wireless antennas that there are enormous privacy violations occurring. It's still unclear who's really driving this antenna densification and for what purposes. And there are many explanations, but one thing is for sure, it's clearly not just about getting faster internet. Not surprising, the telecoms industry spent $92 million in lobbying in 2018, and Verizon spent $17.9 billion on CapEx in 2019 alone. That investment was targeted at its 5G build, densifying its 4G LTE network, expanding the reach of its fiber assets, and upgrading to its intelligent edge network architecture. The carrier plans to spend roughly the same amount on CapEx in 2020. Okay, just to capture the big picture concept of what's happening, I'm going to share a couple images. So here's a map, although a little dated, showing the extensive cell tower coverage across the United States.
Okay, this next slide is showing us over a decade from 2002 to 2012 the increased density of wireless networks. Obviously, we're about 8 years ahead of this right lower quadrant snapshot, so you can only imagine how much worse it's gotten. In this slide, you can see the rapid increase in Wi Fi networks in Europe from 2008 to 2018. And this is only one type of exposure common in most homes, schools, and working environments.
This shows the growth and exposure to microwave radiation from 2000 to 2012. So as you can see, in 2008 was when we passed the bioinitiative recommended level for safety. So we are past the recommended safety of the most respected group of scientists and researchers in this field by over a decade. I will share more about this group's research later on, but this is definitely not good.
Okay, this is a great image from Arizona State University showing a visual of the radiation exposure in Salt Lake City, Utah. As you can see, we're completely blanketing ourselves in this radiation. Okay, this is an important report that came out of Harvard University Edmund J. Safra Center for Ethics called Captured Agency. It shows that our FCC is using the same playbook as tobacco, cutting scientist funding, publishing contradictory science, and having a revolving door between industry and regulators, spending enormous sums of money on direct lobbying, using aggressive legal action and bullying, refusing to examine the health evidence while undermining the credibility of respected scientists. The list goes on. This is Harvard telling us what the government is allowing to happen to our children. This is Harvard telling us that the FCC is supporting industry's interests, not people's or society's interests. Electromagnetic radiation is the tobacco of the digital age. And just like tobacco and smoking, it can kill you. Okay, that's why I want to take a few minutes to talk about our broken regulatory system. It's extremely important for everyone to understand that we have a captured regulatory system and we also have a failure to regulate. If you have doubts on my statement, please hear me out and know that I will clearly connect all the dots for you. This first starts with the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission of the United States. The FCC oversees the Human Exposure Standard Guidelines for wireless radiation. People need to understand, very importantly, that the FCC is a captured agency. This isn't just an opinion. As I shared on the previous slide, the Harvard Ethics Department has done a report themselves, and the exact title reads, The FCC is dominated by the industries that it's presumably regulating. Okay, the other thing that's very important for you to understand, and you can go to the FCC website and see this for yourself, and I'll read it. Quote, at the present time, there is no federally mandated radio frequency exposure standard. End quote. This is being read directly from the FCC website. People need to understand that there is no safety standard for wireless radiation. We have a safety guideline that is based on the recommendations from 4 non government organizations that are highly dominated by the industry. These organizations have been holding on to a long, outdated safety guideline that only focuses on thermal exposures, actual acute burning, and for short term exposures. So it's not taking into account long term exposures or non thermal effects. Additionally, and this is the shocker, I mean, everything's shocking, but this is pretty shocking. This outdated guideline that is being held onto is based on a dummy head filled with fluid, not even based on actual human exposures. So we're talking about a guideline based on measuring heat buildup of fluid inside a dummy head. So you may wonder what the FCC does when pressed on health and safety issues, as they definitely are being pressed now. They say, well, we take advisement from the FDA. What's important to understand about the FDA, they do not have a primary responsibility for these exposures. The FCC does. The FDA is in an advisory role. It makes a huge difference. The other thing we need to understand is the FDA has done research in collaboration with CTIA, which is the Wireless Lobby and Trade Organization. This shows how conflicted and captured even the FDA is. You can also look this up on their website, CRADA, C-R-A-D, the Cooperative Research and Development Agreement. This is where the FDA explains that they've made an agreement with CTIA, and they did research regarding the mechanistic studies of how this damages DNA. So the most important studies in terms of this issue were done in collaboration with CTIA, which again is the Telecoms Lobby and Trade Organization. So when the FDA says that this is safety testing, first of all, they're not doing any safety testing. And the studies they've done have been in collaboration with CTIA. So we shouldn't be surprised that they didn't come up with any concerning findings. I'm going to read directly from the FDA website. Under the law, FDA does not review the safety of radiation-emitting consumer products such as cell phones and similar wireless devices before they can be sold, as it does with new drugs or medical devices, end quote. So this is in their own words. So when they say that this is safe, we don't know what they're basing it on because they do not do any safety testing. Okay, the next thing to understand is that oftentimes people point to the FCC, and then the FCC points to the FDA. And then the FDA says, well, the American Cancer Society says that this is fine and there's not much to be concerned about. So let's talk about the American Cancer Society. First of all, it's not a research organization. It's an organization designed to take in funding to provide to people who have cancer, to help provide support. And what's very important for us to understand, AT&T is one of the corporate partners of the American Cancer Society. You also need to understand that they have a global council, which advises them around the world. There's 10 CEOs in this council. 3 of them are wireless related, and Motorola is one of their global CEO advisors. Also keep in mind that their executives, some of them, come directly from the wireless industry. For instance, Wayne White, who's one of their executive vice presidents, used to work for AT&T, Verizon, Motorola, Alcatel Mobile, and General Electric. They've basically worked for every wireless company you could work for. So when the industry points to the American Cancer Society and saying there's no problem, they're basically pointing back to themselves. This is important for us to know because they will throw this out. And whether it's legislators locally, or if it's the industry themselves, or it's media people who don't want to cover this issue, you need to be able to come back and say, these are highly captured, compromised organizations and agencies. And you need to look at the evidence. You need to know that people are getting sick from this. Okay, so the next organization they point to is the World Health Organization. This is actually pretty great because the World Health Organization already classifies wireless technology as a possible carcinogen back in 2011. Since then, we have enough scientific evidence and scientists pushing this issue to classify this for a Class 1 human carcinogen classification. Why is that important? Because if you classify it as a Class 1 carcinogen, like cigarette smoke and lead, then you need to warn people about the harm. You need to minimize exposure, not maximize it, as we're doing now with 3G, 4G, smart meters, and the rollout of 5G. It's important to understand that today, the World Health Organization, instead of listening to its own collaborative organization, the International Agency for Research on Cancer, which classifies cell phone radiation as a Class 2B carcinogen, they are referring to the ICNIRP, which is a self appointed group from industry that is holding on to this outdated idea that there are only heating effects and there are only acute burning effects, that anything below or before heating isn't an issue. If you want to know more about experts claiming this is a Class 1 carcinogen, please look up the work of Anthony Miller, a medical doctor and research scientist who has been a longtime advisor for the World Health Organization, more than a decade. He recently wrote a paper arguing the Class 1 human carcinogen, providing compelling evidence to support it. Another scientist who has come out very clearly saying that this is a Class 1 carcinogen is Leonard Hardell. He's an MD and a PhD. What really defines and differentiates Dr. Hardell is that he's done the most research on brain cancer and cell phone radiation, well over 80 studies. He also wrote a paper, and I encourage you to look it up. It's titled World Health Organization, Radiofrequency, Radiation, and Health, a Hard Nut to Crack. He basically explains how the World Health Organization has formed a subgroup called the EMF Project. It's made up of scientists that the industry uses to defend them from lawsuits. He explains what's happening at the World Health Organization and how they've been compromised. He personally went with a group of scientists to talk with the World Health Organization, but they weren't open to talking. Surprise. It's important to understand that the World Health Organization, that 2/3 of their funding now comes from outside sources. And there's public documentation to show this. So again, when industry points back to the World Health Organization, they're pointing back to a captured agency. They might as well be pointing back to themselves because they're ignoring their own collaborative group, the International Agency for Research on Cancer, and instead they're deferring to an industry control group, the ICNIRP.
Okay, so I hope you're getting a better picture of what's going on here. The FCC, who is in charge of regulating safety for our EMF exposures, is not regulating anything. They are captured. The FDA is strictly in an advisory role and is also captured, along with the American Cancer Society and the World Health Organization. And any organization or scientist that come forward gets ignored or programs get defunded. So the bottom line is that there is zero safety testing for wireless radiation. Zero. And what we have guiding manufacturers and industry is a test where a plastic dummy gets filled with fluid and is exposed, not human beings themselves. We have to understand that this is not safety testing. Formal safety testing is usually done by a government research organization, but as we've discussed, the FCC does not even have a health department. Formal safety testing would involve pre-market safety testing, and then it would involve post-market surveys to see if people are getting side effects. The heavy users, those that live near cell towers, are children. They haven't done this, and they have no plans to do it in the future. This really means that another government agency, such as the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, or the NIH, the National Institute for Health, need to get involved in our government's failure to safety test technology. What we are currently seeing is criminal.
Even these captured or defunded organizations are reporting what all the other scientists have agreed upon, and that is that EMFs are linked to cancer. You can look up this information on the websites of the NIH, the World Health Organization, and the American Cancer Society. Okay? These medical groups are openly and publicly linking EMFs to cancer.
Okay, so just to bring the main point home, here is the truth about our regulatory guidelines. The scarier part to this is not that most Wi Fi devices emit higher levels than the government safety guidelines. The scarier part is that the research is from 3 decades ago and is based on studying heat absorption of a plastic head filled with fluid for 30 minutes. That's it. This guideline is called SAR, Specific Absorption Rate. How much exposure can fluid take before raising the thermal temperature? So, again, not only was this research not based on human or animal studies, it also was not based on continuous exposure, and it most certainly was not looking at the other 9 non-thermal effects that the scientific community has proven. These safety guidelines do not prevent harm, and they are outdated and irrelevant when it comes to current exposure levels. And check this out, between 1949 and 1962, everything we needed to know about microwaves was known and published. The brain at that time had been studied for brain waves, and microwaves could be used to penetrate the brain and cause behavioral changes. By 1962, with the resonance frequencies of the organs and brain, the cyclotronic frequencies, circadian resonance frequencies, a statement was made in 1962 by the government. All birth defects, organs, whole organisms, all cells, brain function, all emotions, all moods could be altered, changed, and destroyed. Microwaves then, as now, were used as stealth weapons before they became cell phones. It really does make you think.
Now, we also have to face the reality, and this is really dumbfounded when you think about it. The US government has known about these negative biological health risks for 75 years. These are not newfound risks. I'm just going to list some of these studies for you. The Naval Medical Research Institute did a paper in 1971 reviewing the science showing biological effects of radiation. NASA published on it in 1972. The Defense Intelligence Agency published on it in March of 1976. There was a paper out of the University of Michigan in 1979 that reviewed the research from 1940 to 1960, which is really the early days of the radio frequency radiation, worth reading for military and industrial purposes. There was a NASA report in 1981. There was a U.S. Air Force report in 1994. And there was a Department of Army report in 1998. I hope you're starting to get the picture here. The National Institute for Health and the Department of Energy published a paper in 2011 showing blood glucose metabolism impacts from radio frequency, which is cell phone radiation. In the most recent National Toxicology Program that was earlier mentioned, it showed cancer risks. The FDA in 1993 showed in an internal memo that was obtained by Microwave News under a Freedom of Information Act request, admitted microwaves can accelerate cancer.
In 2002, the EPA made the following statement, quote, "The FCC's current exposure guidelines, as well as those of the IEEE and the ICNIRP, are thermally based and do not apply to chronic, non-thermal exposure situations. They are believed to protect against injury that may be caused by acute exposures that may result in tissue heating or electric shock or burn." End quote. Not surprising that the EMF program at the EPA was defunded after this. In 2014, the Department of Interior made the following statement, quote, "FCC standards for cell phone radiation are outdated and no longer applicable as they do not adequately protect wildlife." End quote.
Okay, this is a great list that was compiled by Dr. Gabriel Cousens that was published in an article highlighting the 11 international treaties that have now been violated by the rollout of 5G. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, the Nuremberg Code 1949, the Declaration of the United Nations Conference on the Human Environment 1972, the World Charter for Nature 1982, the Rio Declaration on Environment and Development 1992, the United Nations World Summit on Sustainable Development 2002, the African Convention on the Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources 2017, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, United Nations Global Strategy for Women's, Children's, and Adolescents' Health, 2016 to 2030, the Outer Space Treaty of 1967, and the United Nations Guidelines for the Long-Term Sustainability of Outer Space Activities. Okay, here's a chart from Richard Lear, which identifies the 36 fastest growing diseases from 1990 to 2015, all of which have doubled, in 20 more than tripled, and in 16 more than quadrupled. This was since 1990, which, shocking I know, was when all of this infrastructure started going up. One thing I don't want to do is to lead anyone into thinking that EMFs are the single cause for health decline. There are many people theorizing that 5G has caused coronavirus. It's compelling when you understand that 5G at 60 gigahertz and even 40 gigahertz prevents your hemoglobin from being able to absorb oxygen. But we are complex in nature. So denying that we're dealing with a multitude of environmental toxins would be doing us a huge disservice. Are EMFs the biggest threat to our health? Probably. But we're also dealing with toxic, chemically laden food, toxic water laden with fluoride and chlorine, toxic air, toxic vaccines, etc., etc. 60% of our rainwater is tested to contain glyphosate. Glyphosate pulls out the lead in our piping, further poisoning our water supplies. And radiation and mold are amplified by electromagnetic frequencies. So what we are seeing is synergistic toxicity. It's altogether contributing towards the results found in Richard Lear's research. And of course, it's all driving up the healthcare costs. $2.7 trillion is being spent annually to manage just these 36 diseases alone. There are 170 million people in the United States alone that are suffering from chronic health conditions. And these 36 non-germline diseases happen to share 7 biological factors in common, all of which have been scientifically proven to be a result from electromagnetic radiation exposure. Now listen, I'm not claiming that EMFs are the cause of all this, but what I am saying is that there's no person on earth that could claim they don't have a major hand in the rise of diseases around the world.
Scientists are publishing. Articles are being written. If you want to know the truth about it, you can find it. Just don't go looking for it from industry-funded media outlets. I'm not sure when people stop following the money to understand who's saying what, but we do need to be thinking logically about the research we're consuming.
Okay, Dr. Martin Paul has done an amazing job at putting together the 8 pathophysiological effects caused by non-thermal microwave frequency and EMF exposures, publishing great risks for EU, US, and international health. Number 1, it attacks our nervous system. Number 2, it attacks our hormonal system. Number 3, it produces oxidative stress and free radical damage, which, as Dr. Paul's research points out, has a central role in essentially all chronic diseases. Number 4, it causes DNA damage, both single and double stranded breaks, which result in cancer and mutations in germline cells and produces mutations in future generations. Number 5, it produces elevated levels of apoptosis, which is programmed cell death, which has a major implication for neurodegenerative diseases and infertility. Number 6, it causes lower fertility in males and females, lowers sex hormones, and increases instantaneous abortions. Number 7, this is an important one, as it points to the mechanism of DNA damage. It produces an excess of intracellular calcium. I'll touch more on this briefly in a minute. And number 8, it attacks the cells in our bodies, which ultimately causes cancer. So, from decades of science that actually goes back to the 1940s and maybe earlier, we have well established biological health effects of EMFs. They cause oxidative damage, mitochondrial dysfunction, depletion of melatonin. They increase blood viscosity, which is the thickness in your blood that leads to greater risk for heart attacks and strokes. They cause changes in the hypothalamic regulation and the cerebral blood flow in your brain. They increase cortisol and adrenaline. They decrease neurotransmitter production. They increase intracellular calcium, which has a cascading effect on the whole body system's functioning, even mobilization of mercury out of amalgam fillings. We know there are genetic effects, cancer effects, cellular and molecular changes. We know there are behavioral changes that develop from in utero exposures. Then later on, behavioral changes showing up even more prominently by the time children reach school age. There are great impacts to the nervous system, impairments to the blood brain barrier, cardiovascular problems, hormonal disturbances, immune system dysregulation, metabolic effects, and autoimmunity. There's no wonder it's projected that 1 in 2 children will have autism by 2035. You get the picture. Fertility impairments, one of the most important, impaired learning. Today, there are over 70 million people that are suffering with a sleep disorder in the United States. So, not surprisingly, there's an epidemic of electromagnetic hypersensitive people, and the numbers are rapidly growing. These people struggle to have any interaction in society. They tend to live in EMF free zones, or at least rarely leave their homes without risking severe health challenges. Places like West Virginia, California, and Arizona have towns that are EMF free zones, as well as places in Canada, Italy, Spain, and France. This is a list of some of their symptoms: fatigue, sleep disturbances, headaches, feelings of discomfort, difficulty concentrating, depression, memory loss, visual disruption, irritability, hearing disruption, skin problems, cardiovascular effects, dizziness, loss of appetite, movement difficulties, and nausea. Okay, let's talk about risks for children who are exposed to EMFs. Several scientists held a program at the LaGrua Center in Connecticut a few years ago, and they identified certain risks to children. These are the kind of things that children are struggling with today. We see challenges and issues with impaired fertility, irregular development in utero, challenges with cognitive functioning, attention, memory, perception, learning capability, challenges with energy, emotions, poor sleep habits, mutations to the DNA, challenges with social skills, reaction time, motor functioning, distraction or ADD, hyperactivity or ADHD, issues with focusing, issues with fatigue. We all know that autism is on the rise. Okay, children are just more vulnerable. They have thinner skulls and therefore less brain shielding. Their brains and bodies have a higher water content than adults. They also are physically smaller, and both their nervous system and their reproductive systems are still developing. And they also have a longer time for the latent effects to manifest. A 5-year-old absorbs 60% more microwave radiation than an adult. So this is a real travesty. It's criminal, actually, that we're knowingly impairing our children in this way. I barely can stomach the thought of what will happen to our children as these 5G cell towers get rolled out and activated, these antennas every 2 to 12 houses. What we're seeing is people around the world being drugged for symptoms related to technology use and ambient exposures from cell towers and antennas. We're also seeing an incredible epidemic of college students struggling with depression and anxiety. This survey was taken last year by the American College Health Association of 62,000 students from over 90 colleges, showing 40% of college-age students saying they felt so depressed in the last 12 months it was difficult for them to function. 61% said they felt overwhelming anxiety during the same period. So we're harming people. We're harming young people at critical stages of development. Okay, so I wanted to touch on this briefly because we do know of an alternative to wireless technology. This was outlined in a paper that the National Institute for Science on Public Policy published a couple years ago, co-written by Tim Sheckley, called Reinventing Wires. In this report, 13 important angles were described from which one could compellingly argue that fiber to the premises is a superior technology to wireless. I recommend you looking this up and reading the report in more detail. but hardwired telecommunications infrastructure, in particular fiber to the premises, would meet projected market demand, be dramatically more energy efficient, and diminish a range of risks from wireless communications. I know this is pretty sobering, but I will say, despite all this cover up and sweeping it under the rug, over 40 countries have already passed federal laws banning Wi Fi from schools, and many other initiatives are underway. Look up some of these countries and their laws. Some countries don't allow cell phones in schools for obvious reasons. In April 2019, Brussels was the first major city to ban 5G for health reasons. Lots of towns have attempted the same thing, and we are uncertain where this fight will get them. But there are protests everywhere, and for good reason. The facts are starting to come out, but I believe the European Union study on DNA damage is the major catalyst for these European countries attempting to pass these laws.
So, Switzerland was among the first countries to begin deploying 5G, but health fears have sparked a nationwide revolt. This image on the left captures people taking part in a nationwide protest against 5G technology and 5G compatible antenna deployment in front of the Swiss parliament in Bern on September 21st, 2019. According to the Financial Times News, dated February 12th of 2020, Switzerland's environmental agency has responded to these nationwide protests in Bern, Zurich, and Geneva, halting the rollout of 5G and placing an indefinite moratorium on the use of its network. That's pretty positive. According to this article, 5 proposals for legally binding referendums on 5G use are already in motion in Switzerland. 2 have already been formalized and are in process of collecting the 100,000 signatures needed to trigger nationwide votes that, if successful, will amend the Constitution. Awesome. 1 will make the telecoms companies liable for claims of bodily damage caused by radiation from masts, unless they can prove otherwise. And then the other proposes strict and stringent limits on radiation emissions from these mast cells and will give local residents veto power over all new construction in their area. I mean, this is awesome. Obviously, it's still a developing story in Switzerland, but you can start to see what the voice of the people can do. We need to all band together in the same manner wherever possible. This may be more difficult with the global changes we're seeing, but we still need to keep fighting for our health rights. Here's an image from Italy, and there are over a dozen cities in Italy that have issued resolutions to halt 5G, and it's growing all the time. Whether the governments will actually do anything about it is a question that's hard to answer, but it seems that the rapid deployment of 5G to get the world on a grid system, the Internet of Things, is more important than any health threats. This has become more obvious in recent weeks. According to Dr. Martin Pall, whose research findings I'll share more about next, he says the electromagnetic fields are attacking the 4 things that we most value as individuals and as a species: our health, our brain function, the integrity of our genome, and our ability to produce healthy offspring. We need to think about this very carefully. So now that we know how bad EMFs are for our bodies, I want to get into the mechanism of how we're getting damaged. 6 years ago, this brilliant guy, Dr. Martin Pall, discovered the mechanism of how this is happening. Because EMFs and X-rays oscillate so quickly, they can literally rip electrons off an atom, causing DNA damage more directly. This is known and accepted, and it's why you wear protection when you're getting an X-ray. The EMF at the microwave level and down, which is called non-ionizing radiation, doesn't harm us directly. We didn't know this until about 6 years ago, because all the physicians have said that EMFs, like your cell phone, cannot damage DNA. And they're almost correct, because it doesn't directly cause DNA damage. All the biologists were saying, wait, there's thousands of studies showing that EMF exposure is damaging DNA. So what the heck is going on here, physicists? So they didn't agree. And now Dr. Martin Pall discovered that these man-made polarizing EMFs are causing something called the voltage-gated calcium channel to open, which in turn causes free radical damage and oxidative stress, which ultimately leads to DNA damage. So this was a huge discovery for the scientific community. Okay, so let me explain the voltage-gated calcium channel. Your cell is a membrane, and the membrane has a bunch of gates on it. Consider it like the round hole, square hole, and the triangle hole, and the pegs that fit in each one. So one hole or one gate only lets in a double ion calcium. Another one might let in vitamin C, and another one might let in a certain protein, and so on. So these gates are only supposed to open when you need something. So when your cell is deficient in double ion calcium, it opens, it lets one in, and then it closes again because your body doesn't want an imbalance of calcium. So when it's being caused to open because of these EMFs, now you have too much calcium in your cell, too many positive ions, and that's what's causing all these problems. The EMFs are causing a shaking and vibrating, which we refer to as subatomic chaos. That's when different forces are going in random directions. And that's what this earth material that I'm going to share with you today has been designed and patented around. The shaking and vibrating is like a tuning fork that opens up the voltage gated calcium channel, and then you get your problems. So the EMF is not damaging your DNA directly. This is the missing link that has kept physicists and biologists from agreeing on what is happening. But now we know, and we have a solution for it. So let's understand subatomic chaos a little better. EMFs are basically photons traveling at the speed of light, carrying energy in wave form. The red dots resemble photons, which travel in waves following the arrows. Photons provide the energy needed for life. Each photon has an oscillating force, back and forth as it travels, creating shaking and vibrating, and particles smash into each other. So when that shaking and vibrating comes from a man-made EMF source, that vibrating and shaking is called subatomic chaos. So when you turn on a microwave oven, it shakes and vibrates molecules. These molecules smash into each other. When they smash, they create friction. This friction creates heat, and that's how your food is heated up. The bad news is that the frequency of Wi-Fi routers, cell phones, cell towers, and a lot of our technology are the exact same frequencies as your microwave oven. We could have picked any frequencies, but we chose this one. Okay, so how do we address the subatomic chaos? Your number one priority is to minimize your exposure. So here are some options. Firstly, you can get rid of your Wi-Fi router altogether and switch to Ethernet. It's not hard or expensive, and I highly recommend it. If you choose to keep a Wi-Fi router, you want to make sure it's as far away from your bedrooms as possible and that you turn it off at night. You can purchase shielded, grounded extension cords and power cords for your home. If you can figure out how to alter your circuit breaker to exclude the necessities such as your smoke detector, your alarm, and your fridge, switching off your circuit breaker at night will give you the greatest night of rest. At night, remember, that's when your body detoxifies and restores your health, so protecting the sacred time in your circadian cycle is key to immune health. It is best to keep your phone out of your bedroom, but if you must have it with you, turn your phone on airplane mode while you sleep, as well as any other time that you're not needing it. If you must have your phone line connected to be reached, keep your phone as far away from your body as possible. Your best option in this scenario, get a landline so you can have your cell phone on airplane mode and still be reached on your landline. Never have your phone, your tablet, or your computer on your person. Use speakerphone whenever possible. Exercise your right and get rid of your highly pulsed and dangerous smart meter. These rights are in place because of all the people who have been injured from smart meters. You simply call your provider and you say, due to health risks or health concerns or declining health, you no longer can have their smart meter and you would like it replaced with an analog meter immediately. Remember to watch Josh Del Sol's documentary, Take Back Your Power, for more information on this. You want to get rid of all conductors of electricity, electric blankets, water beds, heating pads. They aren't doing you any good. Please get rid of your AirPods. It is literally putting an antenna inside of your brain, which exponentially increases your chances of brain cancer. You want to get rid of all smart technology. Get rid of your Apple Watches. They are harming you more than they serve your convenience. Please don't ignore the wireless elephant in the room any longer. Okay, solar technology needs to be used wisely. You need to ensure that your solar panels are properly grounded because they do in fact emit an enormous amount of radiation. Our clients that remediate their homes who have solar need extra remediation, so please keep this in mind. You also need to understand what wireless connectivity means to your solar energy, as well as the importance of the right kind of battery. If you have a smart meter and are wirelessly connected to the Internet of Things, when you have a declared state of emergency, basically, when you're connected to the power grid during this time, your power company can take power from the meter side. In other words, between the meter and your house, they can steal what you're producing during these critical needs. In some type of weather event or power outage, they say they must now sequester your power to keep critical infrastructure up. So, this is the reason why you don't want to have any wireless connectivity at all. Unless the solar panels have battery backup for storage, when the power goes out, they're not generating any electricity. Many people do not understand this. You will see panels on people's roofs and you'll think, oh, they have power, when in fact the electricity company has turned off their power. So you have to have battery backup, and you want to make sure to get silicone salt batteries, not lithium ion batteries. Lithium ion batteries can explode and cause fires, so you don't want to use them. And the Tesla Firewall batteries are just that. You can Google lithium ion battery explosions to understand more about this. You also don't want to sit on the lithium ion batteries with electric bikes either. So, two things: silicone salt batteries and no hackability to your solar panels. That's my 2 cents. If you're building a new home, you can actually plan ahead and install shielded wiring, which would be excellent. You want to use battery power alarm clocks instead of the ones you plug into an outlet. Do not charge your phone beside your bed, and don't use wireless chargers. Avoid metal framed glasses, as the metal actually amplifies the chaos by 10 times the strength. You want to leave at least 8 inches of space between your bed and your wall, because the wiring, even in the walls, can still emit a significant magnetic field, and you don't want to be sleeping in that. If your bedroom is located next to your utility pole, position your bed as such so that it's a good 6 feet away from the strong magnetic field source. Refrigerators and home entertainments are big producers of magnetic fields in your home. So if your bedroom is next to the kitchen or the home entertainment, be sure to place your bed on the opposite side of the room. Avoid using a cordless phone, as it also is a wireless device. Have conversations on a landline instead of putting a cordless phone or a cell phone up to your head for long periods of time. Toss out the baby monitor. Okay, your child's body absorbs a significantly higher amount of radiation and needs more protection than you do. Ditch your microwaves, just get rid of them. If you must use it, if you want to keep it and you must use it, keep it as far away as possible when it's on. Try to find a low EMF space when you're digesting your food. It may sound silly, but the lack of stress on your body can radically improve your digestion. Replace all compact fluorescent light bulbs, the curly, whirly forms, with incandescent lights, preferably full spectrum, as these are the healthiest light bulbs to have in your home. Reduce or eliminate the use of problem appliances, such as dimmer switches, printers, scanners, computers, television sets, and wireless products. Be aware that your Apple TV, Smart TV, your Roku, they can all be emitting Wi-Fi signals, so you want to turn them off when you're not using them. You should avoid buying smart appliances altogether. Okay, so your second priority when dealing with the subatomic chaos is strengthening your immune system. Now, some of these suggestions many of you will know, but we're going to briefly mention them because strengthening our immune system can't be overstated, especially in a world where we're regularly inundated with toxins in our air and our food and our water. But please note, I am not a health professional, so please ensure you seek advice from a medical professional before making any drastic changes to your health. These are simply suggestions of steps I know have helped myself and others in supporting the immune system. So you want to drink clean, filtered water. Research the different types of water and really understand how they hydrate your cells. Test your water and check how clean or how toxic it may be. Putting a filter on your shower head makes a huge difference. Eat clean, non-GMO foods. more vegetables and fruits. Eat organic food if possible, but definitely try following the clean 15, dirty dozen. Buying from your local farmers at markets is amazing. Even better, grow your own food at home. Cut out processed foods and sugars. You can substitute sugar with honey, monk fruit, stevia, or coconut sugar. You also want to make sure you're taking adequate amounts of vitamin C, D3, and K. K7 is actually the best because vitamin D does not get absorbed without the vitamin K, so you want to keep that in mind. Zinc is amazing for immune health. Also, elderberry, colloidal silver, we take that in my family. Glutathione supports detoxification, but it should actually be taken where it aligns with your circadian rhythm. So you want to take that at night when you're sleeping. Detoxing by sweating is amazing. I use red and near infrared technology. It's an amazing therapy. I really love it. Ionic foot baths. All of those are not created equal, so make sure you do your research. Epsom salt baths, chlorella, spirulina, bentonite clay, activated charcoal. These are great binding detoxifiers, but you need to keep in mind that they also will dehydrate you, so you need to drink much more water when you're detoxing. Okay, continuing on, something that gets seriously overlooked is the state of our detox pathways. So if you're backed up in your system in any way, you'll just be recirculating toxins and you won't heal. So for your bowels, you want to take something like oxygenated magnesium to keep them moving, or magnesium salts, the consumable kind. Coffee enemas are really helpful, as well as vitamin C flushes. I suggest researching all of these. You want to keep your drainage pathways open by taking herbs for your lymphatic system, your kidneys, and your liver, such as milk thistle and Essiac tea. Cat's claw is also a good one. You want to keep your drainage pathways flowing through other activities like lymphatic massaging, dry brushing, and also rebounding. Just jumping on a trampoline, it really gets your lymph system flowing. It's really healthy. Also, exercising regularly and spending time outside in the fresh air. Also, grounding your feet. The earth is negatively charged, so it's really, really great for you. You can actually charge up electrons into your body just 15 to 30 minutes, on the ground. You can charge up for the whole day. That's why when you take a shower, the water's coming up from the pipes in the ground and they're saturated with electrons. So when you feel refreshed after you take a shower, it's those electrons that are coming through from the piping. It's pretty amazing. So if you can ground, I would highly recommend it. Okay, so your third priority in addressing the subatomic chaos is to harmonize with technology. Okay, you're harmonizing that subatomic chaos around you with technology. I have found 2 to 3 other companies that I believe have products that work. I'm not saying these are the only companies with good products, but these are the ones I found. What bothers me so much about these companies is that they're charging an enormous amount of money, which means that the average person won't be able to afford them. So this automatically becomes a product for the wealthy. Let's just talk about some of the common remediation products that you may have heard of. Black paint. So the problem with black paint is that you may block out the radiation from outside of your home, but you're actually incubating the radiation that's inside your home because now it has nowhere to escape. So that can be a problem. Grounding mats, they can be great, but if they're not properly grounded, you'll actually be drawing all of that chaos in your home to this mat, and then you'll be more radiated and receive, more damaging effects if it's not grounded properly. So make sure you do solid research if you're considering this option. Faraday cages and protective clothing, silver clothing, they can work. They're just really expensive and they're not so practical. So the market is flooded with many products, and I'd say 99% of them do not work. So when you're looking at products, you want to make sure you're looking at products that have research or lab testing to show you that they work. You want to look for products that have solid personal testimonies, and then you want to look for products that also have a good, solid return policy. The products that I'm going to be sharing with you today, they're not only affordable, but they really work. They have been manufactured simply so that as many people as possible from varying situations can get the protection that they need. Before I get into these products, I'm just going to explain a little bit more about this chaos. Okay, so how an EMF causes chaos. This is a good visual example of your router. This is a home where there's a bedroom and a living room. The blue represents the EMF itself that's coming from the router. And all the physicists are agreeing that EMFs themselves physically cannot hurt our DNA and cannot damage us. This is not the problem. But when this EMF, like a photon, smashes into the floor, when it smashes, it's going to create some chaos. And this chaos reverberates, vibrates, and spreads throughout, especially solid material. A little bit through the air too, but the closer the molecules are to each other, the more it spreads, and the faster and longer it spreads. So this red represents the shaking and vibrating. Many people don't notice it because it's invisible, but their cells are reacting to it, and that's what's causing the problem. Now, when our earth technology products are used, which I'm going to be sharing with you today, that red chaos gets addressed by creating a harmonizing field that calms the chaos. Not all EMFs are going to create the red chaos, though. If this was an incandescent light bulb, the old school kind that creates heat, it's going to come off as balanced just like the sun does. The energy from the sun goes off in all directions equally. So when that happens, you don't need remediation because it's not causing chaos in the environment. If you would make this a CFL light bulb, like the man-made kind that has a charge going back and forth to make the light, because of the nature of that charge going back and forth, it's going to smash and it's going to create a chaotic environment.
So, this is how our Earth technology products work. They create a field, kind of like a magnetic field, to remediate EMFs by harmonizing the subatomic chaos. They do not block EMFs, otherwise, your Wi Fi and your cell phones would not work. Magnetism is kind of a good way of explaining how our products work. If you have forces going in random directions, like with man made EMFs, and you put a magnet in the area, it's going to attempt to line up the forces north and south. It's going to try to smooth out some of that chaos so that your body might not have the same reaction and maybe not have the same damage. So the EMF is still present, but like a magnet, when it goes by our stronger earth material products, it completely smooths out that chaos. How do we know our products work? Unlike most of other remediation products out there, we use various ways to show our product's effectiveness. And we actually have more coming, but these are the 5 we can talk about today: blood microscopy testing, thermal image testing, accugraph testing, muscle testing, and testimonials. Okay, so these are the observable effects of radiation when we're exposed to a smart meter. And this is actually from that documentary that I keep recommending, Take Back Your Power by Josh Del Sol. I wanted to share this image because it highlights different states of blood health. So the left image is 3 healthy blood cells from 3 different people before a smart meter exposure. The image to your right is each person's blood after they stood 1 foot away from a smart meter for only 2 minutes. After exposure, subject 1 is showing mycoplasma and broken cell walls, or degradation and mutation of cells. Subject 2 shows corrugation or bottle capping, known to form from oxidation of free radicals. And subject 3 is showing rouleau, which is the stacking of red blood cells. This is the most common effect we see. The sticky cells are not able to deliver as much oxygen to the brain and body tissues. So when they get stuck in rows like this, they're not able to fit through capillaries anymore. Only one red blood cell fits through a capillary at a time. So if these red blood cells' main job is to deliver oxygen and they don't fit through the capillaries, you're going to have less tissue oxygen. And when that happens in your brain, you may show some neurological impairments and experience concentration difficulties, memory problems, etc. It starts to make more sense why the leading experts in autism spectrum disorder are speaking to the harm of EMF exposure on these sensitive kids.
All the blood tests I'm going to show you were administered by an independent party, and each blood sample is taken back to back from one subject. Please keep in mind that based on the exposures that we're all being subjected to in our environments each day, it would be hard to get a sample of perfect looking blood as our bodies are fighting to repair damage from nearly constant exposure. So, this subject was using an unprotected cell phone when they came in. So, that in combination with what I just mentioned, you can see the cells started out not looking too great in image one. They're stuck together. They have white centers, which, although I'm not a medical doctor, we're told that this may be glucose trying to heal free radicals or other cell damage that's occurring. The rest of the images are of the subject being on a cell phone call. Image number two shows her blood sample after 3 minutes on a cell phone using our cell chip harmonizer on the call. As you can see, the blood starts spreading out and it gets healthier. This is because the chaos is being remediated by the harmonizing cell chip. Then you can see in image three, she did another 3 minute call without any product in her phone, and her blood went pretty bad again. You can see rouleau, which is the stacking of the red blood cells in a row. Then she did a final 3 minute call with our product on the phone again. And you can see in image four, it again improved the health of her blood. Okay, here's another cell phone blood test. Again, all pictures are taken of the same person on the same day. In image one, you can see the blood sample before the subject made a call. It doesn't look that great. In image two, after 2 minutes on the cell phone, when using the cell chip harmonizer, you can see her blood starts to look healthier. And in the third image, when the subject takes a second 2 minute call without any products, her blood is looking pretty bad again. So you can understand that oxygen delivery to the subject's body tissue is greatly compromised. Here's a blood test of a person being exposed to a smart meter with and without our products. Image one shows the subject's blood before exposure. We can see round cells spaced apart well to deliver oxygen to the body. Image two shows the subject's blood with a 2 minute exposure to a smart meter, standing a foot away using our products. You can see the blood remains healthy. And in image three, it shows the subject's blood test after another 2 minutes standing in front of a smart meter without using our products. We can see rouleau and sticking and stacking, as well as white centers.
Okay, so power lines don't show as dramatic of an effect as cell phones or smart meters, but they still do cause damage without proper remediation. So in image one, it shows this subject's blood before being exposed to these power lines. This subject shows pretty healthy blood at the start, round cells spaced apart well to deliver oxygen to the body. Then in image two, the subject's blood is tested after another 2 minutes standing under the power lines without using any products. We can see the rouleau and the sticking and stacking that's starting to build, as well as the white centers. And then in image three, it shows the subject's blood after standing under the large power lines for 2 minutes with products. You can see the blood starts to return to a healthier state, spreading out with the white centers mostly disappeared. This thermal image test was done by Total Thermal Imaging out of La Mesa, California. This specific test was done on a subject after two 10-minute phone calls back to back, comparing the use of our cell chip product versus no product. As you can see by these images, the subject displays increased thermal effects when using a cell phone without our products. When the subject used our cell chip harmonizer on their phone, they showed better results. These results are very common. White and red are the hottest colors. So again, with our cell chip harmonizer, you can see an observable protection, and without, we see observable negative effects. So this is an example of one of the Accugraph studies we did. This experiment used the Accugraph digital imaging computerized device, which measures the energetic status of the subject's 12 organ and glands with a digital pi score. Subjects were exposed to high microwave EMF levels for 2 minutes by standing 5 feet from a smart meter, then tested immediately after. Higher pi score is best. So the subject was tested the same day back to back. Accugraphs are like muscle testers. You put a probe on an acupressure point for an organ or a gland, and it gives you a reading. Without our products, we've seen lower nerve and energy flow, which represents lower nerve and energy flow through each meridian in the body and an imbalance. But when we use our products, we had higher energy flow through these points, and they were more balanced. And that's what you want. So as you can see, with this subject, when they used our products, on average, their pi score increased by 15 points. For more info on Accugraph tests and pi score meetings, you can go to accugraph.com. Okay, quantum reflex analysis or autonomic response testing, ART, or muscle testing. Many of our practitioners use different methods of muscle testing, which confirms our product's effectiveness on themselves and their clients. You can see an example of this type of testing with Dr. Omura's patented BDORT version of this type of testing. Our bodies are pretty good at communicating when they're stronger or weaker based on exposure. So it's just a really good way of confirming if something's good for you, making you stronger, or if it's bad for you, making you weaker.
Okay, so I know I've shown you these lab tests, but ultimately, the real proof of our product's effectiveness is when you try them out yourselves. So I'm just going to briefly share when I first tried them out. I was at an Autism One conference and I was about to go in for day two, and I was feeling pretty overwhelmed. If any of you have been to conferences, you know there's a lot of speakers, a lot of experts, a lot of information that's shared and covered, and it can be a lot to take in. So I just prayed. I said, Lord, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know where I should be focusing my energy going inside today, who I should be talking to. I just pray that you would guide me to talk to the right people, that you would help me find the right resources that are going to be best for Jack. I just can't do this on my own. So please help me, guide me to the right place. I'm just giving this to you. So I went inside and I found myself ending up at this EMF remediation table. Of course, the people there were really welcoming and kind and had good energy. But what impressed me the most was these products. Okay, there were, of course, testimonials and there was lab tests, but one by one, people would come up to this booth and they would be shown through muscle testing that their body would get stronger when they had this remediation product on their person while being exposed to while being exposed to electromagnetic radiation. So I'm like, okay, I got to try this product. So I got the single room harmonizer and I brought it home that night and I plugged it in the wall. I kid you not, I had the best sleep of my life that night. I slept like a baby. And I woke up and I'm like, oh, this works. I was just praising the Lord. I was so excited about it because I knew my son was staying with grandpa that night, but I knew this could help him sleep. This could help him get the rest that he hasn't had all of his life, basically. So I ended up going back. I remediated my whole home. I did further research, got to know the company more, got to know the products more. I ended up going through their extensive training program and getting certified as an EMF specialist. I spent many months doing research into the field, the industry, technology advancements, everything, and purchase meters so that I can test exposure levels. And just as I predicted, when I remediated my home, Jack slept through the night that very first night. And apart from, the occasional night being sick, he sleeps through the night every single night. It's just so amazing to have this kind of transformation in his life. And I've seen it over and over again with clients where they, can't sleep or they have migraines or they just wake up feeling more tired than when they went to bed. And just one night, and they feel the difference. So these products really do work. I'm going to share some more testimonials with you. You know, I'm just here because God called me to share this with people. And so I'm listening. Obviously, I'm not that great at doing webinars or sharing information. I'm sure I could have done a much better job, but hopefully you can understand. I'm just trying to get this out to people, to share it with them because I found these products and they work. And we're being exposed to so much these days. I just think it's so important to do what we can while we still can. So I'm going to read a few of these. RB from Poway, California, a holistic practitioner, says, a few days after the EMF remediation to my house and property, the constant pain levels in my body diminished by 90%. Ever since I moved to the house, I slowly began to experience health issues, primarily pain, fatigue, and insomnia. I tested my house and had it remediated. The results were night and day. I now sleep deeply through the night, and the physical body pain is nearly completely gone. Nick M. from San Diego said, the whole house product has been in for 2 weeks, and I've noticed I'm truly rested when I awake in the AM, and my husband has more energy in general. Thanks. Ian from San Diego said, I'm noticing a remarkable feeling of restfulness upon waking in the morning.
Consequently, I'm having more energy daily as a result of sleeping better. Megan C. from LA said previously feeling tired all day and using products less than 1 week. I spend time in my house and it feels amazing. Woke up at 5 a.m. this morning fully rested, when normally I wake up at 10 a.m. feeling still very tired. Thank you so much. Nancy from San Diego said, after having my new house remediated, I had two separate guests come. Each told me the night they had at our house were the best night's sleep they had in a long time. Immediately, I knew this was because of the remediation. Okay, MA from Point Loma, California says, I wake up feeling brighter and chipper, and I can get going much faster in the mornings than I used to. Really made a big difference, and I can definitely feel it. I already started recommending this to my neighbors and friends. Lisa D., a colon hydrotherapist from San Diego, says, I'm noticing better sleep and no more headaches upon awakening. Also, since using the EMF patch and remediating my cell phone and my car, the numbness in my left leg has disappeared. One more thing, I've had an itchy patch of skin on my body for years, and it just wouldn't go away. It's now 90% gone. RZ from San Diego, California says, the house feels so good. I slept deeper than I have in a very long time. I can't thank you enough. Lisa, an RN and health consultant in San Diego, said, my building put in solar panels on the roof. My office went from calm to chaotic. The energy became quote unquote depleting and left me tired at the end of the day. I cannot thank you enough for the remediation. Since then, my clients come into the office saying, it feels so good and calm in here. And now I have energy all day. This is fabulous. Before sharing more details about these products, I have to share this disclaimer with you. These products are not meant to replace any medical assistants, medical doctors, or to be sold as medical equipment or as medical devices. These products do not claim to cure any ailments or diseases. Testimonials speak for themselves on lessening the toxic load and toxic stress, allowing for other areas of the body to get the rest and repair they need. Saying that, our products definitely work, and we have a 60-day money-back guarantee so you can try them out for yourself risk-free. Okay, the technology that I'm sharing with you today is a proprietary blend of earth materials that powerfully remediates the negative health effects of electromagnetic radiation, and that includes 5G technology. You won't find a more affordable product on the market or a product that works better. Now, we all need remediation from wireless technology, but regardless of what you decide today, I will share with you what remediation options are available and for what purposes they serve, so you can make the right decisions for you. Earth technology for you. So your body and your cell phone are crucial. We have a cell chip harmonizer that goes on your cell phone. And as we saw earlier, a person's blood health actually improves when they're using their cell phone with our cell chip harmonizer to remediate that chaos. For your body, you can wear a silicone band, Fitbit type protection around your wrist, which is my personal choice, so I don't lose it anywhere. Or you can opt for a credit card like personal protection card that can be carried in your pocket. Then we have laptop and tablet chips for your other device technology. Earth technology for your home. It is very important that you have remediation and harmonizing around your home or your condo or apartment. This remediated space will allow all the chaos that's directed at your home and most of what's within your home to be calm and not cause harm to you and your family. This will allow your body to detox and rebuild as it was designed to during your sleep cycle, as it won't be under that stress from radiation exposure. So if you live in a home and have access to your electricity meter, you can put a home remediation box on your meter outside, and this will remediate the radiation going into and around your home, including all dirty electricity. If you do not have access because you live in a condo or an apartment, we have room harmonizers that will plug into an outlet that will work to remediate 1 to 2 rooms each. We also have device chips that serve to remediate the chaos coming out of your Wi-Fi router, your PlayStation, your air purifiers, your fans, basically anything with Bluetooth. And lastly, we have a Better Z's sleep bag, which goes under your mattress. If you have metal in your bed, that metal actually amplifies the chaos from electromagnetic radiation. So those sleep bags are really wonderful to have. Earth technology for your car. I don't know if you're like me, but I spend a lot of time in my car, and I love that I have this. It protects you while you're on the road. You may not even realize this, but everything from your built in Bluetooth technology for your phone calls, your satellite radio, your satellite maps, they all create a serious amount of radiation that gets amplified in the metal of your vehicle. Additionally, the harmonizer will shield you from the cell towers and the numerous cell phone antennas that are surrounding you while you drive on the road.
So, today I am offering an amazing package deal to you because I want to get this out to as many people as possible in the most affordable way possible. Please keep in mind that these products are already steeply discounted in order to make them accessible to more people. The couple of companies with products I have found to work are charging 5 to 10 times our prices. I understand not everyone will be in a position to purchase any products today, and that's why I hope you found value in the health strategies I've shared with you today and still make the decision to do what you're able to minimize your exposures, to start on your health journey remediating your life from these unnecessary EMF exposures. So, seriously, no pressure. I just want to give you options. If you decide to purchase this home personal bundle today, you will get complete EMF remediation for you and your home. That includes either a home harmonizer or multiple room harmonizers, depending on whether you live in a home, a condo, or an apartment, a personal protection product of your choice for your body, a cell chip for your phone, and a device chip for your Wi Fi router, all of which comes with a risk free 60-day money back guarantee. Of course, if you need additional items, you will receive a discount on those as well. And in addition, if you purchase this bundle, you will be getting a discount code emailed to you after your purchase. This discount code can be used for any of you or your family's future remediation needs. So it's a forever discount. Nobody else is offering this kind of deal, so I really hope you can try these products out and see how much better you and your family can feel. You can click on the link that I'll provide momentarily, or you can visit my website at www.healthawarenessandsolutions.com and take advantage of my promotion by entering discount code 5G Webinar 2020. Please note, this discount code will only work if you have either a home or condo personal bundle in your purchase order. If you have any questions or would like further support or a free consult, you can always reach out to me at healthawarenessandsolutions@gmail.com. I know it was a lot to take in, so I really appreciate you taking the time to be here. If you felt that this information was valuable, I would greatly appreciate you sharing this video with your friends and family. I also would like to invite each of you to join my private Facebook group, EMF Awareness and Solutions for Family Health. I share up to date developments in research and the news, and I have a huge amount of research and reference material for you to learn from. Please click on the link below or visit my website at www.healthawarenessandsolutions.com and take advantage of my offer today. Again, thank you so very much for spending the time with me today. I really hope to connect with you soon. Have a wonderful rest of your day.